For thousands of years, most people have had only one dream, and that is to live longer, and if possible, to live forever. Many kings, emperors, and wealthy people have spent enormous amounts of money to discover the secret of long life. That's why even today there are still scientists researching how to slow down human aging. In fact, because people are so obsessed with immortality, some are now relying on cryonics, a process where the body of a deceased person is frozen, hoping that one day they can be brought back to life when more advanced technology becomes available. But even so, what if the answer to immortality lies in animals and nature? Honestly, that's true. Because there are animals that have long been doing things that humans still can't do. In fact, there are creatures in this world that have been living for more than 100 years, and there are some that hardly age at all. But what animals are they? Is it possible to take that ability from them and transfer it to humans? And that's what we're going to find out. But before we start the discussion, I'd like to ask you for a like and please subscribe to our channel. This is a huge help for us content creators. So let's get started. The first on our list is an animal found in the Galapagos Islands. This is the Galapagos giant tortoise. The Galapagos Islands are located in the Pacific Ocean on the western side of Ecuador in South America. It has been over 400 years since travelers first wrote about this island. And one of the animals on the island that they immediately noticed was the enormous tortoise roaming around. This is not an ordinary tortoise. Some of them live for more than 100 years. Others even live for over 150 years. In other words, there are tortoises that live longer than 3 or 4 generations of people. That's why scientists have long been pondering a question: why do they live this long? In 2022, researchers conducted one of the largest studies on animal aging. They examined many types of reptiles and amphibians from different parts of the world, and they noticed something. Turtles are among the animals that age the slowest. This doesn't mean that their aging stops. They still get older every year, but their bodies weaken more slowly. Their cells deteriorate more slowly. They develop problems common to older animals more slowly. But why does that happen? One of the reasons is their slow metabolism. Simply put, their bodies function more slowly compared to humans. Imagine 2 light bulbs. One light bulb is on all day and all night. The other is only used occasionally. Which one will last longer? Of course, the one that's used less. This is the same idea with the bodies of turtles. Because their bodies function more slowly, they also deteriorate more slowly. There's another thing that scientists have noticed. Their thick and sturdy shell is not just protection against predators. It's also possible that this helps lower their risk of dying due to accidents or attacks from other animals. When an animal is safer in the wild, it has a greater chance of living longer. Let me add that this story became even more interesting because of a famous tortoise they called Lonesome George. George was the last known member of a species of giant tortoise in the Galapagos. When he died in 2012, it became big news around the world. But even though George died, he still contributed to science. Researchers took samples from his DNA and began to study it. And there they found some unique characteristics. They discovered that giant tortoises actually have genes that help the body repair its damaged parts more efficiently. They also have traits that may help fight certain diseases. This includes illnesses that usually appear as an animal gets older. The discoveries don't end there. In another study, scientists also noticed that when there are cells that get damaged or have problems in a turtle's body, their body removes them more quickly, like a fruit that is starting to rot. If you remove it from the basket right away, it won't affect the other fruits. This is also what the bodies of giant tortoises do. The cells that could cause problems are removed more quickly. Because of this, the possibility of the disease spreading in their bodies is reduced. This is one of the reasons why scientists continue to study giant turtles up to now, because their bodies may hold secrets that can help us better understand why animals age and how it might be possible to keep the body healthy for a longer period of time. But no matter how amazing the Galapagos giant turtle is, it still doesn't have the longest lifespan on our list. Let's move on to the next one. Under the cold and dark sea of the Arctic, there is an animal that seems to come from another time. It moves slowly, quietly, it's large, and it could be older than many countries we know today. This is the Greenland shark. It is one of the most mysterious sharks in the world. It is not as fast as the great white shark. It is also not often seen by people because it usually stays in the deep and very cold parts of the ocean. But the reason why it is famous among scientists is not because of its speed, but because of its age. According to a study published in the journal Science in 2016, the Greenland shark is the longest living vertebrate known to science. Vertebrate means an animal with a backbone. This includes humans, birds, fish, reptiles, and mammals. And among all animals with a backbone, the Greenland shark holds one of the most impressive records for lifespan. According to a study by researchers from the University of Copenhagen, some Greenland sharks can live for at least 272 years. Some estimates even reach almost 400 years. And there's a possibility that some are even older than that. Just think about it. If there was a Greenland shark that lived for more than 200 years, it might have been swimming in the sea even before our great-great-grandfather was born. Even so, while the world changes above ground, it quietly moves beneath the ice. But how did scientists determine the age of a shark? Sometimes you can count the ring-like patterns on the hard parts of the body, just like with a tree. When you cut a tree, you can see the lines that can tell you how old it is. But it's not that easy with the Greenland shark. Some parts of its body are soft. It also doesn't have enough hard parts that can be used to easily count its age. That's why scientists used a different method. They looked at the shark's eye. Inside its eye, there's a part that forms while the shark is still young, even before it is born. And that part hardly changes as the animal grows. It's like a small record inside the body. This is where scientists used carbon dating. To put it simply, carbon dating is a way to estimate how old something is based on the chemicals that remain in it. It's not perfect, but it's a big help in determining how old a creature is. In that study, they examined the eyes of 28 female Greenland sharks, and that's where the surprising result came out. The largest sharks in the sample were estimated to be over 300 years old, and one of them could possibly be between 272 and 512 years old. Because of this, there is enough evidence to consider the Greenland shark as one of the longest living vertebrate animals. Now, the big question is this: why do they live so long? One of the most important reasons is the coldness of their habitat. The Greenland shark lives in the cold waters of the Arctic and North Atlantic. In this kind of place, many things move very slowly. Movement is slow. Growth is slow. The use of energy is slow. And when the body runs slowly, it also deteriorates more slowly. It's like a cell phone. If you use it all day for games, it runs out of battery quickly and heats up fast. But if you use it only a little, it lasts longer. This is also the idea with the body of the Greenland shark. Its metabolism is very slow. Metabolism is what we call the way the body uses energy. If the metabolism is fast, the body uses energy quickly. If the metabolism is slow, the use of energy is slower. In the Greenland shark, the body's processes are extremely slow. That's why it also grows slowly. Despite this, there are Greenland sharks that reach sizes of over 5 meters. Some are even estimated to reach close to 7 meters. It's like seeing a shark as long as a small boat. But even though it's big, it's not fast. In fact, the Greenland shark is known as one of the slowest moving sharks. According to studies, its speed is even less than 3 kilometers per hour. It's even slower than the normal walking speed of a person. But in their world, there's no need to always be fast. In the dark and cold sea, What's important is to conserve energy, and that's one of their possible secrets. Life is slow, growth is slow, aging is slow. In 2024, a new study was presented at the Society for Experimental Biology about the metabolism of the Greenland shark. According to the researchers, they examined muscle samples from several Greenland sharks. They looked at whether the activity of certain enzymes changes as the shark ages. Enzymes are like tiny helpers inside the body. They help processes in the body work, such as using energy. In many animals, as they age, these processes change. But in the Greenland shark, researchers noticed that the changes don't seem to be that significant. In other words, even as the shark ages, some parts of its bodily functions remain stable. This is the reason why they are even more interested in this animal. Because in most animals, as they age, their bodies tend to weaken. But in the Greenland shark, it seems that its bodily decline is much slower. This doesn't mean that the Greenland shark is immortal. It still dies. It can die from disease, accidents, hunger, changes in the environment, or because it gets caught by humans. But when it comes to aging, it's a different story. Its body seems to be set to a very slow pace. While other animals grow and age quickly, the Greenland shark seems to move through time very slowly. Another reason why it's hard to study is because of where it lives. The deep and icy sea is not easy to reach. The Greenland shark is also rarely seen in its natural environment. That's why for a long time our knowledge about it has remained limited. Much of the previous information about them comes from sharks that were caught. In the past, the Greenland shark was hunted for the oil from its liver. There was much more hunting back then, especially before 1960. Today, this kind of harvest is more limited in some areas, but humans still have an impact on their population, and this is where the discussion becomes serious. If an animal takes more than 100 years before it can reproduce, it recovers very slowly when its numbers decrease. According to some studies, it may take a very long time before the Greenland shark becomes sexually mature. There are estimates that it could take more than 100 years. And when an animal grows slowly, usually their population also increases slowly. This means that if many of them are caught, their lost numbers cannot be replaced quickly. This is why studying them is important. It's not just because we want to know why they live long, but also because we need to understand how to protect them. Because if these animals disappear, we will also lose a living proof of nature's unique way of fighting aging. The Greenland shark is not a sea monster. It's not just an ordinary shark either. It's a reminder that there are still secrets in the world that we don't fully understand. Above the sea, the world changes quickly. Nations fall. Wars begin and end. Generations are born and disappear. But beneath the cold waters of the Arctic, there is a shark that swims slowly, silent, slow, and carrying on its body one of the biggest questions in science. What if the secret to a long life isn't speed, but slowness? Now let's talk about the next one on our list. This is called black coral. When we hear the word coral, we usually think of the colorful coral reefs found in clear waters. But black coral is different. In fact, it's not really black on the outside. Most of the time, it's yellowish brown or golden brown in color. But when you look at its hard inner skeleton, that's where you'll see the black color. That's why it's called black coral. For many years, no one knew how old some of these corals were. That's because they live in the very deep parts of the sea. It's so deep that sunlight can barely reach it. They're also hard to study because it's not easy to get to where they live. But when scientists conducted a study, they discovered something surprising. There is a black coral estimated to be around 4,265 years old. This means it was already alive even before many ancient kingdoms in the world were established. While human history was changing, it just kept growing under the sea. Naturally, scientists wondered how it managed to live that long. One of the reasons is its extremely slow growth. According to studies, it only adds a very small amount to its body each year. You would hardly notice any change if you looked at it every day. But because it continues to grow over thousands of years, it gradually gets bigger. It's like a piggy bank. If you only put 1 peso in every day, it seems small. But if you do that for many years, you'll save up a lot. The same thing happens with black coral. It grows slowly each year. There's another reason why it lives so long. It lives in the deep parts of the sea. There are very few changes in the environment. There's no intense heat from the sun. There are no strong waves like in the shallow parts of the sea, and it is also rarely disturbed by humans. In other words, the place where it lives is quieter and safer. It also doesn't rely on sunlight to survive. Instead, it gets small food particles that float in the water as if it's just waiting for food to pass by. That's why it can survive even in the darkest parts of the ocean. This is the reason why black coral is so important to scientists. It shows that there are creatures in the world that can live for a very long time because of slow growth and a stable environment. As of now, it is one of the oldest animals discovered by science. But even 4,000 years is not the most impressive record on our list, because there is another creature in the ocean that is believed to be even older than this. And what's surprising is that it has no brain, no heart, and no eyes. But it could be one of the oldest living creatures on the entire planet. And this is the Antarctic glass sponge, also known as the giant volcano sponge. It can be found in the cold oceans surrounding Antarctica. It can grow to over 1 meter wide and almost 2 meters tall. But its size isn't the reason why it became famous among scientists. What people talk about more is its lifespan. For many years, researchers have tried to find out how old these sponges are. That isn't easy to do. That's because they don't have rings like trees. They also don't have clear markers that can be used to count the years. So scientists use different models and calculations to estimate their age. Some studies have suggested that some of these sponges could be more than 20,000 years old. There are even higher estimates than that, but not all scientists agree with those numbers. Other researchers have said that their true age might be lower because of changes in sea levels in the past. In other words, there's still debate about the exact number, but one thing is clear. These sponges live for a very long time. So in many studies, the more cautious estimate is around 15,000 years. And even that is very hard to believe. Now, why do they live that long? One of the reasons is the extremely slow pace of their lives. Compared to most animals, almost nothing happens to a sponge in a single day. It doesn't chase after food. It also doesn't fight off any enemies. All day, it just stays still at the bottom of the sea while water flows through its body. And as the water passes through, that's where it gets its food. It's like a natural filter. It lets water pass through its body. Then it takes tiny bits of food in the water. Its system is simple, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it lives so long. There's another unusual thing about the glass sponge. Its body has tiny parts made of silica. Silica is also one of the materials used to make glass. That's why it's called a glass sponge. When you look at it closely, it's like there are tiny pieces of glass inside its body. These parts help form its strong skeleton, and even after the sponge dies, its skeleton often remains on the seafloor. Another unique characteristic of the sponge is the simplicity of its body. It doesn't have a brain, it doesn't have a heart, it also doesn't have eyes, and it doesn't have real muscles like most animals. But even so, it can still eat. It can grow and it can live for a very long time. It's like it's showing that you don't need a complicated body to live long. Sometimes the simpler the system, the longer it lasts. There's another type of glass sponge that scientists often study. It's called the Venus flower basket. It's known because there are small shrimp that live inside it. When the shrimp are young, they can get inside the sponge, but as they grow bigger, their chances of getting out become smaller. So usually they end up living there inside the sponge until they grow old. It's like the sponge becomes their home for life. In return, the shrimp help clean the inside of the sponge. so both creatures benefit from each other. For a very long time, these sponges have been a part of the ocean floor. When they die, their skeletons are left behind. And over time, these become places where other sponges and small organisms can live. In other words, even after they die, they still help other creatures. As of now, the Antarctic glass sponge is one of the longest living animals known to science. But even 15,000 years is not the most extraordinary story on our list, because the next creature we have is not just long-lived. According to scientists, it has the ability to do something that is almost impossible for most animals, and that is to reverse its own aging. And now let's move on to the animal that is the reason why many people use the word immortal. It's not a shark, it's not a coral, it's not a sponge either. It's just a small jellyfish. It's very small, even smaller than a human fingernail. But among all the animals we've discussed, this one probably has the most unique ability. This is called the immortal jellyfish. Now let's clarify one thing right away. The word immortal doesn't mean that it can't die. It can still be eaten by other animals. It can still die from disease. It can still die if it gets injured. But it can do something that almost no other animal can do. It can return to a younger form of its life. In other words, when it faces a serious problem, it's like it resets its own body. To better understand this, let's first look at how most jellyfish live. They usually start as very small organisms. Then they grow. They become adult jellyfish. And when the end of their life comes, they die. That's the normal process, but the immortal jellyfish is different. When it gets hurt, hungry, or experiences extreme stress, its life doesn't end right away. Instead, a strange process begins. Its body gradually returns to an earlier stage of life. It's like an old person suddenly becoming a child again. Of course, that's not exactly what happens, but that's the easiest way to understand the process. Within a short period of time, its cells change their function, and instead of remaining an adult jellyfish, it returns to a younger stage of its life. After this, it can grow again and become an adult jellyfish once more, and if the right conditions happen again, it can repeat the process. This is the reason why this animal became famous all over the world, because on paper it seems like it has no limits when it comes to aging. While most animals grow old and die, this jellyfish can return to a younger stage of life. But remember, this doesn't mean it's guaranteed to live forever. If it's eaten by a turtle, fish, or another predator, its life still ends. If its body is severely damaged, it can still die. So it's more accurate to say that it doesn't die easily from aging. It doesn't mean that it will never die. This species was discovered in 1983, but scientists didn't immediately notice its unique ability. Many years passed before they realized what it was truly capable of. In the 1980s, some researchers saw something they didn't expect. They noticed that some adult jellyfish didn't die as expected. Instead, they reverted to a younger stage of their life. That's when this animal started to be called the immortal jellyfish. And until now, it is still being studied. Naturally, there's a question that comes to many people's minds. If jellyfish can do this, could it also happen to humans someday? For now, the answer is not yet. The human body is still very far from having this ability. We can't reverse our entire bodies to return to our youth. We can't reset all of our cells like this jellyfish does. But scientists are still interested in this. It's not because they want to make humans immortal, but because they want to understand how the jellyfish is able to change its cells. If they understand this process better, it could help in studying aging, repairing damaged cells, and certain types of diseases. And here ends one of the strangest journeys in the natural world. From giant tortoises that live for more than a century, to the Greenland shark that may have lived for hundreds of years, from the black coral that lasts for thousands of years, to the sponge that may be older than much of human history. And in the end, a small jellyfish showed the strangest ability of them all, not the biggest, not the strongest, not the smartest either, but perhaps the most surprising. Because out of all the animals we've seen, this one is the closest to something humans have long dreamed of, to escape aging. And it reminds us that there is still so much we don't know about life. Because the more science studies nature, the more it reveals just how many secrets are still hidden on our planet.